Cognitive dissonance occurs when a person experiences conflicting thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes about a particular situation or decision. This psychological effect can cause discomfort, anxiety, and even guilt. To alleviate this discomfort, people often try to rationalize or justify their behavior by altering their beliefs or attitudes. For example, a person who smokes despite knowing its harmful effects may rationalize their behavior by telling themselves that smoking helps them cope with stress. Confirmation bias is a tendency to search for, interpret, and remember information in a way that confirms pre-existing beliefs or attitudes. This psychological effect can cause people to overlook information that contradicts their beliefs and to focus on information that supports them. For example, a person who believes that vaccines are harmful may ignore evidence that proves otherwise and focus only on information that supports their belief. The halo effect is a tendency to form an overall positive or negative impression of a person based on a single trait or characteristic. This psychological effect can cause people to overlook other traits or characteristics that may contradict the initial impression. For example, a person who is physically attractive may be perceived as more intelligent or likable, despite having no evidence to support those assumptions. Do you want to learn more about the psychological effects that affect your life, your career and personal growth, effects that prevent you from realizing your own idea and affect your relationships? Subscribe to the channel, so you don't miss new exciting videos. Self-fulfilling prophecy is a belief or expectation that influences a person's behavior in a way that makes the belief or expectation come true. This psychological effect can lead to a cycle of behaviors and outcomes that reinforce the original belief. For example, a person who believes they are not good at public speaking may avoid public speaking opportunities, leading to a lack of experience and reinforcing their belief. Priming is a phenomenon in which exposure to a stimulus influences a person's subsequent behavior or perception. This psychological effect occurs when exposure to one stimulus, the prime, affects the response to another stimulus. For example, showing someone a picture of a smiley face can prime them to perceive a subsequent image as more positive. The mere exposure effect is a psychological phenomenon in which people tend to develop a preference for things simply because they are familiar with them. This effect occurs because people tend to feel more comfortable and secure with familiar things. For example, people may develop a preference for a brand of soda simply because they have seen the logo or heard the name many times. The anchoring effect is a cognitive bias in which people rely too heavily on the first piece of information they receive when making a decision. This psychological effect can cause people to make incorrect or irrational decisions, as they are overly influenced by the initial information. For example, a person may be willing to pay more for a product if they are first presented with a high price, even if the actual value of the product is lower. Social loafing is a tendency for people to exert less effort when working in a group than when working individually. This psychological effect can occur when individuals feel that their contribution to the group is not essential, or when they believe that others in the group will take on more responsibility. For example, a student working on a group project may contribute less effort than they would if working alone, assuming that others in the group will compensate for their lack of effort. The framing effect is a cognitive bias in which people make different decisions depending on how information is presented to them. This psychological effect occurs because people tend to be influenced by the way information is framed, such as the context or the wording. For example, people may be more likely to buy a product if it is framed as a discount rather than as a regular price. The Pygmalion effect is a phenomenon in which high expectations for a person can lead to improved performance. This psychological effect occurs because people tend to perform better when they believe that they are capable of doing so. For example, a teacher who expects their students to excel may inadvertently create an environment that fosters better performance. The sunk cost fallacy is a cognitive bias in which people continue to invest in a decision or project based on the resources they have already invested, rather than the potential future benefits. This psychological effect can cause people to make irrational decisions, as they are influenced by the past rather than the present or future. For example, a business owner may continue to invest in a failing project simply because they have already invested a large amount of money into it. The spotlight effect is a phenomenon in which people believe that others are paying more attention to them than they actually are. This psychological effect occurs because people tend to overestimate the extent to which others are focused on them, leading to self-consciousness and social anxiety. For example, a person may be hesitant to speak up in a group setting because they believe that others are more focused on them than they actually are. The Zeigarnik effect is a phenomenon in which people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks better than completed tasks. This psychological effect occurs because people have a natural tendency to remember unfinished business, which creates a state of tension that motivates them to complete the task. For example, a person may be more likely to remember a task that they started but did not finish, compared to a task that they completed. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias in which people who lack knowledge or expertise in a particular area tend to overestimate their ability and knowledge, while those who are more knowledgeable tend to underestimate their ability and knowledge. This psychological effect occurs because people have difficulty evaluating their own competence and understanding. For example, a person who has only taken one cooking class may believe that they are a great chef, while a professional chef may underestimate their own ability due to their knowledge of the vast complexity of cooking. The self-serving bias is a cognitive bias in which people tend to attribute positive outcomes to their own abilities and efforts, while attributing negative outcomes to external factors beyond their control. This psychological effect occurs because people have a natural tendency to protect their self-esteem and maintain a positive self-image. For example, a student may attribute their high grade on a test to their intelligence and hard work, while attributing a low grade to an unfair test or a difficult teacher.